Stephanie, tell me, do you believe in ghosts and spirits? I don't really believe it. However, I want to tell you the story of how the ghost of my late grandmother helped me get married. I assure you, everything here is the naked truth. Well, soon you'll see what I mean. So, the story began when one day, I met a guy. His name was Jason, and he was a blogger. Handsome and witty. It was just about impossible not to fall in love with him. He was always chasing after me, so it's not very surprising that we soon started dating. And yet, there was something about Jason that I couldn't understand. He didn't ask to live together, he didn't introduce me to his friends, and he constantly left when someone called him. All this was really strange, but I loved him, even if he didn't pay attention. And then one day, something happened. One evening, I was hanging around with Jason. We were chatting and laughing just like normal, and I didn't even notice that we happened to be in the cemetery. What were we doing here? Jason replied that he wanted to tell me something very important. It was already quite dark and scary, and I could hear strange noises from everywhere. When we got to the interior, Jason stopped and turned to me. My heart sank into my heels, but then he smiled. He took a small box out of his pocket, and he got down on one knee. Stephanie, he said, you and I are so close, and I wanted to ask you if you would marry me. Jason opened the box, and there was a wedding ring! My breath was gone. I was so excited, and for good reason. I had never been proposed to, especially not at the cemetery. But I was just so happy that I forgot where we were. Of course! Yes! I answered. I'll marry you! Jason threw his arms around me, and he put on the ring. I was just so happy! I was so eager to tell my parents and everyone else I knew that I was getting married! I already imagined the way everything would be. I would stand in a snow-white dress at the altar. Is what every girl dreams of waiting for me? The next morning, I woke up in a cheerful mood. And immediately, I began to choose a dress for myself and dream about where I'd go with Jason on our honeymoon. I decided to call Jason to find out where we'd be spending the night. But for some reason, he answered coldly that he was busy and he wouldn't be able to meet with me this evening. That's pretty strange, I thought. But I decided to leave him alone and not ask him any questions. Friends were sending me congratulations after I sent everyone the good news. My parents also congratulated me and promised to come to our wedding. Being as happy as I was the whole day, I didn't even notice that another had gone by. I dialed Jason's number again just so I could hear his voice. But for some reason, he didn't answer. What was happening? Maybe Jason had some important business, but is the business really more important than me? Jason didn't answer the next morning either. I was starting to think some bad thoughts. Maybe he was scared of his decision. I didn't want to think about it. He still didn't answer my calls. I wanted to go to him, but I didn't know where he lived. In the evening, Jason did reply to the message. He told me he was swamped with work and couldn't talk to me. What was happening? I just couldn't understand. And that was how I spent the next few days. Jason basically vanished. We hadn't met since the conversation at the cemetery, and he didn't answer my calls, and he was behaving so strange. Then, one day, I was sitting at home and fiddling with the ring that Jason gave me. It was the most common, inexpensive wedding ring. At some point, I decided to distract myself a little. I opened Jason's blog and I got stuck watching his videos. Suddenly, I saw something strange in the list of recommended videos. In the picture for the video, Jason was standing in the same cemetery, and next to him was me! Blimey! Well, that can't be! I started watching the video, and I couldn't believe my eyes! This was the channel of a blogger named Miles. He said that he'd struck a bet with his friend, Jason, who said that he would propose to the first girl he came across at the cemetery, and that the girl would definitely agree. Well then, Miles said, Jason won. He tricked a naive girl who agreed to marry him. I wonder what she'll do when she finds out it was all just a prank. And at that moment, I was fuming. Everything Jason had said to me was a lie. He used me for entertaining his audience. Finally, everything fell into place. Jason never thought of marrying me. Now I understood why he was acting so weird and avoiding me. I felt insulted, but I wasn't gonna cry. At that moment, I decided I would pay Jason back with his own coin. That evening, I found the phone number of this blogger Miles on the internet, and I called him. Of course, he recognized me. I said I wanted to meet him. At first, he refused, but I reminded him that he was also partly to blame for what happened to me, and then Miles agreed. We met in his studio. I immediately said that I wasn't here to sort things out. I was here to make him an offer. Miles gave me a strange look and said he was interested. For sure he didn't expect such a reaction from me. He must not know me very well. I offered Miles another parlay. Jason will marry me within a week, and of his own free will. Miles stood with his mouth agape. He didn't believe me, but he still accepted the parlay, and we even shook on it. The only thing that I asked him to help with was the technical aspect of pranking Jason. I could see in Miles's eyes that he was super interested, and he agreed. And then we got started. Miles, under the pretext of discussing new work plans, went to visit Jason. And while he was distracted, Miles installed a hidden audio system with remote control throughout his apartment. And then everything was ready for the prank. Miles and I sat in his car outside Jason's house and waited for my fiancé to fall asleep. As soon as the lights went out in the windows, the show began. I turned on the microphone, which transmitted sound to Jason's apartment, and began to speak in a terrible voice. "Jason, you bastard! I will punish you!" Jason's apartment very quickly lit up again. Miles and I laughed as we imagined him running through the house looking for the source of the sound. As soon as Jason went to bed again and the lights in his windows went out, I continued with the prank. "Jason, you hurt my granddaughter! Watch out! I'm coming for you!" The lights came on again and Miles and I were keeling over in laughter. This went on all night. Jason never found where the sound was coming from, and it seemed was extremely scared, because the next day, he called me and offered to meet, and this was what I'd been waiting for. When we met, Jason began to lie that he had a lot to do and he couldn't find time for me. He also proposed to postpone the wedding indefinitely. What a scoundrel. I put on a good face, but I just kept thinking to myself, let's see how soon you come running to me. Jason, as if by chance, asked, "Where is your grandmother?" I answered quite calmly that she was lying in the very same cemetery where he'd proposed to me. I showed him a photograph of my grandmother and said that she was quite a witch, and before she died, she promised to look after me from the other side. I saw Jason go pale with fear. I asked him, "Are you okay?" Jason replied quickly that everything was fine and suggested spending the evening together and meeting again the next day. Well, my plan worked. Jason stopped ignoring me. He answered every call and every message. Several more nights, I arranged a conversation for him with my late grandmother. Miles and I laughed as we imagined Jason hiding from Grandma's ghost under the covers. A few days later, he turned to Miles for help with his work. Jason said he'd been sleeping very badly lately and asked Miles to edit his next vlog. This was exactly what we expected. While working on the video, Miles very discreetly embedded a photo of my grandmother as a witch behind Jason. And when my boyfriend watched the video, he saw my granny's ghost appear behind him. Miles said that Jason fell out of his chair in fear. He immediately rushed to call me and started babbling, slurring his words. "Stephanie, do marry me as soon as possible." And that's it. I won the parlay with Miles. Just a few days later, we had a grand ceremony. I was in a snow-white dress. Frightened Jason was nearby, with a face the same color as what I was wearing. There were many guests at our wedding. My grandmother, who, by the way, was still in one piece, sat in the first row. I deliberately put her closer. Jason cast fearful glances at her in dismay, thinking that the ghost of my grandmother came to our celebration. I also invited Miles to the wedding. Lately, I had gotten very close to him. Well, you understand. I didn't like Jason at all. I only married him to get revenge and win the parlay. And, well, I had a serious relationship with his friend, Miles. And that was our little secret. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel. My story is pretty unlikely to end here. Come on, give me some prank ideas in the comments. We'll definitely be playing some more tricks on Jason together.